Welcome to the world of science fiction stories, and don't forget to share and subscribe the channel. The city of Astor shimmered beneath a lavender sky, its crystalline spires capturing and refracting the light of 3 distant moons. Between these gleaming towers and gravity-defying walkways, the ethery moved with effortless precision, their steps as measured as their soft voices. The entire civilization seemed to exist in a state of perpetual choreography, a dance of order and symmetry. Nerissa stood apart from it all, her opalescent skin shifting colors with her emotions, currently a troubled mix of blue and violet. Her feathery antenna twitched in response to whispers she pretended not to hear. Impulsive. Unpredictable. Disruptive. She had been called worse. Her iridescent eyes scanned the vast chamber of the Grand Concordance Hall, taking in the assembly of ethery dignitaries and the occasional interstellar guest. The hall was a masterpiece of light and crystal, transparent floors revealing the city's layers beneath, walls adorned with constellations that moved in slow, deliberate patterns. It was a sacred space where ethery rituals unfolded with the precision of celestial mechanics. Tonight was the annual stellar concordance, celebrating the alignment of Lumina's 3 moons. The first notes of the ceremonial music rippled through the chamber, a sound more felt than heard, resonating through bone and spirit. Ethery couples began to form, gliding effortlessly into synchrony, each step predetermined by centuries of tradition. It was mesmerizing, a perfect display of unity. It was also, Nerissa thought, profoundly stifling. She didn't want synchronization. She didn't want to be another star in a perfectly mapped constellation. She wanted to be a comet, unpredictable, brilliant, and free. When the time came for the third sequence, dancers paused as new partners were to be selected according to rank and lineage. Nerissa knew no one would choose her, her family was respected enough, but her reputation preceded her. Too many times she had questioned, improvised, or worst of all, suggested changes to ancient customs. As expected, no one approached her. She saw the pitying glance from her cousin Vane, but he remained with his assigned partner. Nerissa pulled her shoulders back, determined not to show how much the rejection stung. That was when she noticed him. At first, she thought he might be some sort of experimental hologram, or perhaps an unusually detailed diplomatic projection. But no, he was real. Human. The men stood at the periphery of the hall, clearly an outsider both by biology and demeanor. Where the ethery carried themselves with ethereal grace, this man had a casual, grounded presence. His formal attire, clearly chosen to respect ethery customs, nonetheless appeared slightly rumpled, as though gravity had a stronger claim on him than on the ethery. His hair was a rich auburn, and his eyes a vibrant green that reminded Nerissa of the rare flora that bloomed in Lumina's deepest valleys. He surveyed the scene with curious interest. He caught her gaze, and Nerissa felt a curious flutter in her chest. She had interacted with humans before, Lumina had established trade relations with Earth decades ago, but there was something different about this one. An openness perhaps, or maybe it was simply that he, like her, stood apart from the perfect harmony of the concordance. Envoy Tavin Adler, a voice announced softly beside her. Nerissa turned to find Alindra, one of the junior diplomats, at her side. He arrived yesterday, Alindra continued, her tone neutral but her antenna twitching with disapproval. The Trade Council insisted he be invited to observe the concordance. Apparently, he's quite important to the new stellar route negotiations. Nerissa nodded, her attention still drawn to the human. Tavin Adler. The name suited him somehow. He should be observing from the diplomatic viewing platform, Alindra sniffed, not here among the dancers. Perhaps he wanted a closer view, Nerissa suggested, a hint of amusement in her voice. Alindra's skin flashed a warning yellow. The concordance is not a spectacle for outsiders. It is a sacred tradition. A tradition of harmony between all elements, Nerissa countered. Isn't that what we tell visiting dignitaries? That our dance represents the unity of all things. Unity within proper order, Alindra clarified, then glided away as the music shifted, signaling the next sequence. Nerissa remained where she was, once again without a partner. The formation moved around her, like water around a stone. She should step back, retreat to the edges as was expected of those unpaired. Instead, she made a decision, her skin rippling into a determined silver as she moved, not backward toward the fringes of the gathering, but forward, directly toward the human observer. The movement itself was a transgression, those without partners were to remain still until the next selection. A ripple of shocked whispers followed in her wake. She ignored them. Tavin Adler noticed her approach, his expression shifting from passive observation to alert interest. When she reached him, she paused, suddenly aware of the enormity of what she was about to do. "You look like someone with an interesting story," he said, his voice carrying a warmth that was entirely out of place in the pristine hall. Nerissa's antenna quivered. "I was about to say the same about you, Envoy Adler." "Tavin, please," he replied with an easy smile. "Formal titles make me feel like I'm wearing shoes that are too tight." Despite herself, Nerissa felt her lips curve upward. "I'm Nerissa." "Beautiful name," he said, and something in his tone suggested he meant it. Around them, the music shifted again, growing more complex as the dance entered its fourth sequence. Nerissa knew she should rejoin the gathering, find her proper place. Instead, she extended her hand, palm upward in the traditional ethery gesture of invitation. The entire hall seemed to freeze. Someone gasped audibly. In the corner of her vision, Nerissa saw Lendra's skin flash a horrified crimson. Ethery did not invite, partners were assigned, determined by status and tradition. Dance was not an invitation, it was an obligation, a structured progression of pre-approved gestures. And yet here she stood, hand extended to an outsider, breaking every rule of the concordance. Tavin looked at her outstretched hand, then at the startled faces around them. Understanding dawned in his eyes, he realized the significance of her gesture. "I should warn you," he said, his voice soft but carrying in the sudden silence, "I once accidentally stepped on a Centurion ambassador's ceremonial cape. If you value your toes, you might want to reconsider." Nerissa's skin shimmered with suppressed laughter. "I'll take my chances." He placed his hand in hers, his touch warm, solid, so different from the cool, measured contact of ethery hands. The music, which had faltered, resumed uncertainly. The gathered ethery stood frozen in disbelief as Nerissa led Tavin into the center of the chamber. "So," he murmured as they took position, "on a scale of 1 to interstellar incident, how much trouble are we in?" Nerissa's antenna curved forward in amusement. "Let's find out." And then they danced. The ethery style was fluid, almost gravity-defying, a series of interwoven arcs and spirals meant to emulate the motion of celestial bodies. Tavin adapted quickly, his movements lacking the ethereal precision of a native dancer but compensating with an unexpected grace and, more shockingly, spontaneity. When the pattern called for a measured turn, he added a flourish. When the sequence demanded separation, he maintained a connection through his eyes, never losing sight of her. And unlike the ethery, whose faces remained serene and composed throughout, Tavin smiled, an unguarded, genuine expression of joy. Nerissa found herself responding in kind, her skin shifting to a radiant gold that reflected her delight. And when Tavin spun her, not the calculated, deliberate spin of ethery tradition, but a human spin, fast and exhilarating, she laughed aloud, the sound crystal clear in the shocked silence of the hall. As they completed the final movements of the sequence, Nerissa became acutely aware of the gathering storm around them. The high luminary, leader of the council, had risen from his seat, his skin a dangerous deep blue. The ceremonial dancers had all but stopped, their perfect formation ruined by the distraction. "I think," Tavin whispered as they came to a stop, still holding her hand, "we've officially rewritten the diplomatic handbook." Nerissa couldn't help but agree. The ethery valued harmony above all else, and they had just introduced chaos into the most sacred of ceremonies. As the high luminary approached, his expression unreadable but his intent clear, Nerissa made a second decision: whatever consequences awaited, she would not apologize. For the first time in her life, the dance had felt real, and looking at Tavin's face, the same human who had dared to step into her world without fear, she knew that some things, some connections, were worth breaking every rule in existence. The high luminary stopped before them, and the hall held its breath. The reckoning had begun. The luminary chamber felt colder than the void between stars. Unlike the grand concordance hall with its flowing architecture and celestial illumination, this space was deliberately austere, a perfect circle with 12 high-backed crystalline seats arranged like the points of a compass. Between them, at the center of the circle, stood Nerissa and Tavin on a platform of polished moonstone. High luminary Orvin studied them from the tallest seat, his skin a steady, impassive silver that revealed nothing of his thoughts. The other 11 luminaries maintained a similar composure, though subtle shifts in their skin tones betrayed varying degrees of displeasure. "Nerissa Valen," Orin's voice resonated through the chamber. "You have disrupted the stellar concordance, our most sacred ceremony, with an act of unprecedented defiance. Nerissa kept her chin lifted, her skin purposefully maintained at a neutral opalescence despite the anxiety coursing through her. Beside her, Tavin stood with his hands clasped behind his back, his posture straight but not rigid. For someone facing an alien tribunal, he appeared remarkably composed. "I invited Envoy Adler to dance," she replied, her voice clear. "A gesture of welcome to our honored guest." "Welcome is extended through proper channels," Luminary Selene countered, her tone cool, "not through disruption of sacred traditions." "And what tradition was disrupted, exactly?" Tavin spoke for the first time, his question genuinely curious rather than confrontational. Several luminaries shifted in their seats, antennae twitching in agitation. Addressing the council without being directly questioned was yet another breach of protocol. "Unity within established order," Luminary Javan explained, his skin rippling briefly with blue annoyance. "The dance sequences of the concordance reflect the precision of cosmic alignment. Each participant has their assigned place, their predetermined movements." "And I did not have a place," Nerissa pointed out. "I was without a partner, as I have been for the last 3 concordances." A murmur passed through the council. Orin's eyes narrowed slightly. "That was not a decision made lightly, Nerissa," he said. "Your previous improvisations during ceremonial gatherings were taken into consideration." "My improvisations?" Nerissa echoed, her skin flashing briefly with frustration before she controlled it. "You mean the times I suggested we might adapt traditions to reflect changing circumstances? The times I asked why we must perform every ritual exactly as it was done 1,000 years ago?" "Tradition endures because it works," Selene stated. "Our society thrives on order, precision, harmony." "Does it thrive," Nerissa challenged, "or does it merely maintain?" The council's collective skin tone shifted toward indignant blue. Tavin, sensing the deteriorating situation, stepped forward slightly. "If I may," he began. "I believe there's been a misunderstanding. As Earth's envoy, I was honored to participate in your ceremony. Where I'm from, dance is often an expression of diplomatic goodwill. If my participation caused offense..." "The offense is not yours, Envoy Adler," Orin interrupted. "You were invited into a violation of protocol. The responsibility lies with Nerissa." Tavin frowned. "With respect, I accepted the invitation with full awareness that it was unconventional." "You could not have known our customs in detail," Javan dismissed. "Actually, I did," Tavin countered. "I've studied Aethery culture extensively before my assignment here. I knew exactly what Nerissa's invitation meant." This admission caused another ripple of reaction through the council. Nerissa glanced at Tavin, surprised. He had known the significance of her gesture and accepted anyway. "Then you share in the disruption," Selene concluded. "I share in an attempt at cultural bridge building," Tavin replied evenly. "Isn't that what these trade negotiations are about? Finding common ground between different worlds?" Orin regarded him thoughtfully. "A diplomatic perspective, envoy. However, there are proper venues for cultural exchange. The concordance is not one of them." "What will our punishment be?" Nerissa asked directly, tired of circling the inevitable. The High Luminary's expression shifted almost imperceptibly. "Punishment implies criminality. You have not broken law, merely sacred custom." "Semantics," Nerissa muttered. "Nevertheless," Orin continued, "there must be consequences for actions that disrupt our harmony." The council members exchanged glances, a silent communication passing between them. Finally, Orin spoke again. "In 4 cycles, Lumina hosts the Celestial Unity Festival, a celebration marking 5 decades of alliance between Aethery and humans. As this event celebrates precisely the kind of harmony you claim to have been demonstrating, it seems fitting that you both should represent our diplomatic relationship there." Nerissa's antenna stiffened in surprise. This was not the punishment she had expected. The Celestial Unity Festival was a prestigious event, drawing visitors from across the galaxy. "You want us to perform?" she asked cautiously. "To participate," Orin clarified. "A series of exhibitions demonstrating the cultural harmony between our peoples. Traditionally, these roles would be filled by designated cultural ambassadors, but since you have taken it upon yourselves to represent this interspecies harmony, you may do so officially." Tavin cleared his throat. "I'm a trade envoy, not a dancer." "Yet you danced well enough to disrupt our most sacred ceremony," Selene observed dryly. Consider this an opportunity, Javan added, to channel your collaborative energies into something constructive rather than disruptive. Nerissa recognized the assignment for what it was, not a punishment, but a test. A way to observe them, to keep them occupied, perhaps even to set them up for a more spectacular failure. And if we refuse, she asked. Oren's skin darkened slightly. Then we would be forced to reconsider Earth's petition for the new trade route through our system. After all, how can we trust partners who reject opportunities for cultural exchange? Tavan's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. Nerissa understood immediately. The council was using his diplomatic mission as leverage. If he refused their opportunity, the trade negotiations his government had sent him to secure would collapse. We accept, Tavan said before Nerissa could respond. He glanced at her. That is, if Nerissa agrees. Their eyes met, and something passed between them, a silent acknowledgement that they were now bound together in this strange consequence of their shared defiance. I agree, she said finally, turning back to the council. We will participate in the festival. Oren nodded once. Then it is decided. You will work with festival coordinator Felon to prepare your presentations. You are dismissed. That could have gone worse, Tavan remarked as they exited the luminary tower into the twilight-bathed city. Above them, luminous 3 moons hung in perfect alignment, casting prismatic light across the crystal spires. Could it? Nerissa's skin had relaxed into a thoughtful violet hue. They've essentially made us public spectacles. I prefer to think of it as giving us a stage, Tavan replied with a hint of optimism. Besides, I've been in worse diplomatic binds. There was this situation on Europa involving ice fishing rights and a misplaced thermal drill. Despite herself, Nerissa felt her mood lightening. You don't have to do this, you know. I could speak to Oren privately, explain that I coerced you. Tavan laughed, the sound warm and genuine. First, no one would believe that. Second, I'm not in the habit of abandoning dance partners. He paused, studying her with those forest green eyes. Why did you ask me to dance, Nerissa? Really? She considered deflecting but found she didn't want to. Because you were watching everyone with such curiosity. Not judgment, not the cold observation I'm used to seeing. You looked alive. Whereas you looked absolutely miserable standing there alone, he observed. I wasn't, she began to protest, then stopped herself. Was it that obvious? Only to another outsider, he said softly. They walked in silence for a moment, passing under an arch of living crystal that hummed faintly with resonant energy. What did you mean when you said you knew what my invitation signified? She asked finally. Tavan smiled. I've studied ethery culture for years. Your society has always fascinated me, how you've built an entire civilization around principles of harmony and precision. Yet you accepted an invitation that violated those principles. I accepted an invitation from someone brave enough to question them, he corrected. That's far more interesting. Nerissa felt her skin warm to a faint rose color, a reaction she couldn't entirely control. The festival begins in 4 cycles. We should start preparing. Agreed, Tavan's expression turned thoughtful. Though I'm not entirely sure what we're preparing for. What exactly happens at this Unity Festival? It's primarily a cultural showcase, dance exhibitions, musical performances, art installations, all centered around the theme of harmony between different worlds. And we're supposed to represent human ethery relations. He ran a hand through his auburn hair. No pressure there. We could always perform a traditional ethery sequence, Nerissa suggested tentatively. I could teach you. Tavan gave her a sidelong glance. Is that what you want? To fall back into tradition after making such a spectacular stand against it. The end.